Mercedes car for 2023 looks super fast. So we're going to be going through that and 4 other stories in today's video. So don't forget to like this video, and if you want more Mercedes F1 content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hitting that red button down below. But let's get straight into the first story, because Toto Wolff outlines plans to change Red Bull Mercedes car in bid to challenge Red Bull in 2023 and make the car super fast. Toto Wolff has promised to change the DNA of Mercedes car for 2023 after a humbling campaign which has seemed them to fail to challenge Red Bull. Mercedes sits an incredible 240 points behind leaders Red Bull in the constructors' standings, while neither Lewis Hamilton or George Russell have recorded a race victory in 2022. Hamilton went close to breaking his duck at the US Grand Prix on Sunday, only to be overtaken by back-to-back world champion Max Verstappen in the final laps of the race. The DNA of the car is going to change for next year, that's clear, Mercedes chief Wolff said. And he did mention it doesn't necessarily mean that our bodywork is going to look very different, but certainly what is part of the DNA of the car, the architecture of the car, and will definitely change for next year, and we are going to make the car super fast. Now, the reason why I think this is so important is because, as you all know, Red Bull and Mercedes have a little bit of a rivalry, and you can even mention Ferrari in that, and Mercedes really haven't been performing well, not only due to the porpoising issues they experienced on earlier this season, but also in straight lines. Red Bull really does a great job at being very fast on straight lines, and that's usually where Mercedes actually fall behind and why Red Bull has been able to overtake them time and time again. During the straights, Red Bull will win 10 out of 10 times, and this is something Mercedes and the team are looking into, and something Lewis Hamilton has also brought up with the team multiple times in order for them to get the car as fast as possible during those straights to keep up with a team like Mercedes. When it comes to driver and driver, Lewis Hamilton versus Max Verstappen, I still think Lewis Hamilton is a better driver, and during the turns you can definitely see that. Now, Mercedes struggled in the early part of the season with porpoising and have found further issues with the car as the year has progressed, being unable to match the speed of the Red Bull in a straight line. Hamilton lamented his lack of pace after coming close to victory on Sunday, but insisted Mercedes had taken a step in the right direction. "I think under DRS they're like 35 kilometers faster than us," he said. "If we're behind them, we're like 22 kilometers faster. I think it is with DRS on the back straight." So he came from a long way back. But even without DRS, I think there's still something like 8 kilometers ahead of us, so we've got a lot of time being lost on the straight, probably 4/10 at least a lap. So we've got some improvements to make for this car next year. Red Bull clinched the Constructors' Championship in the US, and should Mercedes remain third in the standings behind Ferrari, they will have 14% more wind tunnel running than Red Bull next term. And I think this is really huge to understand. And Wolff thinks that could be crucial. He added, "From that point, it was a significant disadvantage so far because of all of 21. We were leading the team, and then we won the Constructors' Championship. So all of the first half of 2022, we had 7% less wind tunnel time than the 18 months before Red Bull, and is much less than Ferrari. Now it swings the other way around. Compared to Red Bull, we're going to have 14% more if we finish third, so that overtime is exactly what the regulations were designed for, to give us the potential to take advantage out and to claw it back." And I think this is something that they can use to their advantage, especially next season. As you all know, Verstappen, has been really performing well, but I think, that advantage definitely played a part. And that's definitely where Mercedes are going to be heading into next season, where they have an advantage and they can use this to really push for another Constructors and Drivers' Championship for Lewis Hamilton, and for him to finally break the record. Now, getting into the next story, talking about Lewis Hamilton reflects on awkward Mexico Grand Prix after boos all day. Lewis Hamilton was booed after the Mexican Grand Prix, explaining it had been awkward as this had been happening all day, with pole sitter Max Verstappen retaining his lead at the start, while Hamilton took P2 from teammate George Russell. It seemed like a battle between the 2021 title rivals possibly was coming our way. This did not come to fruition though, Hamilton crossing the line P2 for the 4th time this season. But as he exited his car and went over to do the post-race interview in front of the grandstands, boos could be heard ringing out, directed in Hamilton. The 7-time world champion would reveal that people had been booing him all day, which had made the experience at the Mexican Grand Prix awkward. This is something which sadly has become increasingly common in Formula 1 over recent years. Hamilton or Verstappen over the recipient depending on which nation they are in. This has been an amazing crowd. Definitely a bit awkward this time around, said Hamilton. Booze all day, but nonetheless, I have so much love for Mexico and for the people here, and what a great race event they have put on this weekend. While Verstappen started the race on the soft tire, Hamilton began on the medium rubber, hoping that this would work in his favor as he kept Verstappen within sight during that opening stint. I was so close, I think in that first stint, Hamilton commented, but once his teammate Russell went onto the hard tires, Verstappen switching to mediums, Verstappen was able to pull away and take the win with a margin of 15 seconds. But I think the Red Bull's just clearly too fast today, and ultimately maybe they had a better tire strategy, Hamilton added. To Hamilton's point, on several occasions he had questioned Mercedes' choice to switch him onto the hard tire, believing it was not the right call. Russell was also struggling. Mercedes' thought process was the yellow marked medium tires would drop off of Verstappen, allowing Hamilton to close in at the end, and it did not work out that way. So when it comes to all this, obviously the Grand Prix wasn't to what Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton wanted, but I do think they did a fantastic job for him to be able to finish second. I'm not sure it was the right tire at the end, Hamilton reiterated. I thought we should have started on the soft, but obviously we had the opposite tire. It was okay in the first stint, but that hard tire was just an offset, so congratulations to Max. And I think this was very important to understand as well. When it comes to how the race really went, I think they could have done better with the tire management, but they tried something new to give it a little bit of a risk factor, and it just didn't play out in their favor, and that's just how the game goes. And that's basically how sports always is. You know, sometimes you have to take those risks, sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But getting into the next story, Daniel Ricciardo has a 2023 plan amid hope for F1 return. George Russell, we'd like to see him at Mercedes. Daniel Ricciardo believes a break from Formula 1 will be a blessing in disguise, and has confirmed he is still talking to certain teams about a reserve role in 2023, with George Russell giving his Mercedes endorsement. Since seeing his McLaren contract cancelled in August, Ricciardo has seen his viable F1 options dry up, and now the only seat available on the grid at Haas, who the 8-time race winner is not interested in driving for. The Mexico City Grand Prix was, however, a welcome reminder of Ricciardo's talents, as the Australian finished a best of the rest 7th despite picking up a 10-second penalty for a collision with Yuki Tsunoda. I can confidently say that I won't be on the grid behind a wheel next year, Ricciardo told Sky Sports afterwards, but I still want to be in the sport, and I want to be working with the team still with the ambition to be back on the grid in 2024. I feel like a bit of time away from the race seat will do me good, and then try to rebuild on something for 2024. I'm not done, but it will look a little different. Ricciardo, who has struggled alongside Lando Norris since joining McLaren in 2021, added, "No doubt the last 2 years have been quite hard, especially when you put a lot in, and when it doesn't quite come back, it can get you down. I know the value of having even like a summer break, just stepping away, giving you a different perspective. The way the seasons are, it's pretty relentless. You've got the really chance to rebuild. Everyone's different, but I truly believe that will be, in a way, a blessing in disguise for me. By doing less, I'll achieve more." Ricciardo has stressed that he is open to a reserve role in 2023 with one of the top 3 teams, Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari. "That's the plan," he explained. "I honestly don't know where I'm at right now. I'm certainly talking to teams, but I still want to obviously keep a foot in the door, as said, for 2024. I'm sure seeing the lights go out in race 1, I'll already have that itch, so I want to be back in 2024. Ricciardo has been most strongly linked with Mercedes, partly because the world champions now have a reserve spot open for Nick de Vries leaving for a seat at AlphaTauri for 2023. Ricciardo was coy when asked about Mercedes outright, but said there's enough to certainly keep me interested and keep me open. He was then joined on the Sky Sports F1 stage by Mercedes boss Toto Wolff and driver Russell, who was asked about Ricciardo joining his team next year. "I meant, it would be interesting, we'd like to see that," said Russell. "It's up to Daniel to see what he wants to do with his future." So I don't think Russell is trying to pressure him or force him into coming into Mercedes, but I do think it would be great to have someone like Ricciardo as a reserve driver, and it will play a lot of dividends to that. So getting into the next story, Hamilton Red Bull was too fast for Mercedes to beat in F1 Mexican Grand Prix. Both Hamilton and George Russell began the race on medium tires, with Mercedes trying to counter Red Bull's start on the soft rubber, as Max Verstappen wanted to cut cover off a threat of a run into the first corner. Although it seemed that Mercedes were going to attempt to go long into the race on the mediums and switch to soft at the end, the team instead made the jump to hards with Hamilton before half distance with Russell following suit. The pair would occasionally match the Red Bulls on pace, but the gambit of waiting for the medium tires on Verstappen and Sergio Perez cars to fade away did not work, as tire wear proved long throughout the race. I was so close. I think in that first stint, Hamilton said of his initial stint on the medium tires, but I think the Red Bull was just clearly too fast today. Ultimately, maybe they had better tire strategy. I'm not sure was the right call at the end of the day when it came to the hard tires. I thought we should have started on the soft. Obviously, we had the opposite tire. It was okay in the first stint, but the hard tire was just offset. Congratulations to Max. It's great to be up there and separate the two. So I think it is really interesting to see, what Hamilton thought of the whole tire management. Like I mentioned before, it is really a high risk, high reward play, and it did seem to favor a little bit of Red Bull more than Mercedes, but that's just how the game goes, and at least they can learn for it for next season. I think a lot of the things they are risking now is definitely to prepare themselves for next season where they have a definite chance, so it doesn't really matter whether they lose or whether they win. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon. Peace.